How many thousands of dollars do you have tied up in pre-orders on crowdfunding at any one point? Hey, ranking, reviewing, crowdfunding, look back, hype up, hype down. Where are things at? We're going to go just 1 year back here, June 2023. This was a big month. Now, 2 and 3 years ago, not nearly as much. This year, also a big month. But 2023, impressive, big names. Where are they at? How are you feeling about them now, right? Did you FOMO? No FOMO zone. Let's go. Very hyped. Very intriguing. Very this way and this way all over the place, right? For June of 2023. So we got to talk about them. We got to let you know my thoughts on them because, right, my channel. I get to rant and rave on these things all the time and be right and wrong. It's so much fun. That's why you tune in. Opinions. I'm not always right. I'm not always eloquent. But boy howdy, I will give you my opinion. Which, truth be told, speaking of a different slight cold open here, not to bore people and not to avoid getting into the main topic, I've been noticing less reviews on crowdfunding and more previews, right? More. I've been saying that, but I've really been noticing it lately. And I feel like it's just gonna get worse before I get myself in trouble. Let's go! So first up, let's go Awakened Realms, because we're just seeing the launch of one Awakened Realms game, and we're going back and looking at S.T.A.L.K.E.R. 15,000 people, $3.7 million. Can't be wrong, can it? Based on a video game? Oh, Chris, you're just singing words to my ears right there, right? And I always find it weird that when you go over to the GameFound pages, they talk about, the total sum raised, which is never really what it raised in the campaign, because they throw all of the extra monies and extra backers on the late pledging in with it. It's a little bit of marketing manipulation there, I feel like, as a whole. So it's got 5.4, which means it raised $1.7 million, nearly 50% additional funding post-campaign, folks, which you can interpret how you want. I would interpret it at this point, right? No incentive to back during the campaign. No incentive to back during the campaign. Because what I'll say at the beginning of this, the latest update prior to me filming this, just prior to me filming this, the latest update is a work in progress rulebook, which is weird because just after I'm filming this, the pledge manager closes, which I guess is good in a way, but it doesn't give a lot of wiggle room between, hey, this isn't even a final version of the rulebook, and hey, you're in or you're out, right? And I personally hate that. And they say in the comments, we want to provide you with as much information to help you make an informed decision. I guess, I don't know, right? Mechanics are final. Wording might undergo some changes. Zone survival mode isn't even included in this rulebook, is going to have a separate one. So that's the campaign core rulebook right there, right? So essentially you have 2 weeks between the time they release it and the time that you have to make up your final decision on whether or not this is right for you from that aspect of things. This game is a fully co-op zone crawler. Chernobyl nuclear plant explosion exclusion zone based off the video game Sneak In, guns blazing, however you prefer. And hard story decision makings, you can one-off the zone survival mode if you like that sort of things too. And there's going to be 3 separate chapters of campaigns. You don't have enough campaign games yet. You should get this one. They're only 10 or 12 hours each for each of the 3 of them. So that's plenty of time. Easy to get to the table. And storytelling? Are you in it for the narrative? Are you in the narrative dungeon crawl scheme of things right now, right? I just posed this with Grim Coven when I was talking about the best games of June in terms of upcoming crowdfunding, Grim Coven versus Blood, right? If I said to you Grim Coven versus Blood and you stripped off all of the names and, a bunch of the aesthetic and you put them head to head, where is your mechanical gameplay, aesthetically non-featured mind going to go? And that's how I think you need to start approaching these things. And I'll say the same with S.T.A.L.K.E.R. and Awakened Realms, right? that the fact that, you know, it wasn't finalized before the campaign ended. They had a whole mode that didn't even come out. And it reminiscently reminds me of insert of several of those things, keywords, adjectives, open whatevers, RPG, dungeon crawl, narrative, consequences, campaign, scenarios. This one, thankfully, didn't have any appeal to me. I have no nostalgia for the video game. I didn't really like the stealth style-esque noise mechanic that they were bringing with this one in the first place. What's going to be the differentiation? Now, it's sort of like the leader situation, too, where you go, okay, this game isn't exactly what it was during crowdfunding. I see that you have undergone significant iterations, tests, 0.3s, 0.5s, 0.7s, 1.2s, whatever version it may be, right? So ultimately, I hope that is always for the best. And I would imagine for the vast majority of it is. At the same time, it goes, okay, well, if I'd liked some of that stuff, right? If I was one of those people that liked the initial, how different is it going to be than what I originally pledged? Which goes back to the very point at the beginning of you probably shouldn't be freaking pledging based off of anything but a rule book at this point. Because plenty of you say, well, I don't care about anything but gameplay. I don't care about your opinion, Chris. I don't care about anyone's opinion other than my own. Well, the only way that you're going to get the best opinion then in your case is going to be that rule book. But then you're going to have to wait with a lot of the Awakened Realm ones until they close up shop on the campaign. And are you willing to do that? Because frankly speaking, I see a lot of people unwilling to put their money where their mouth is from that standpoint. Now, a lot more in this campaign did. I'll also wager here, of that $1.7 million that was post-campaign, it's not nearly as many backers increased, though, as well, proportionally. So that means of more than, its fair share of that money was probably people doing add-ons or upgraded pledges rather than people just getting in because they waited until the rulebook was out. How do you feel now? Right? I'm still waiting for Cthulhu Death May Die season 3 and 4, right? Just saw those post-production photos in my emails today. I always give Awakened Realms kudos because they separate out the core and the miniatures, right? Miniatures are top-notch. One of the top 3 in the whole hobby scene. Twice as much for the same money. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you can't guarantee me that. And I feel like that's also false advertising we see across the board on crowdfunding pages nowadays. If you can tell me that all of the online distributors are going to all have it marked up at that price, sure. But the honest answer is that that's not the case. So that's marketing lingo 101. And again, Awakened Realms, I give them kudos. Their aesthetic and their marketing is second to almost nobody in terms of driving up the interest and the hype. But is it right for you? Do you want both of those modes? Are you ever going to play both modes? I'm always conflicted by that with games with multiple modes now, right? Like even one of my favorite games of all time, Bullet from level 99. I primarily play that competitively, right? I can't tell you the last time I played solo. I can't tell you the last time I played cooperative. We tend to go with one. And these are no different. You love the idea in your head of having these multiple modes I can explore and you're not going to use more than one. You're not. You're me. You're not. Prove me wrong in the comment section down below. I don't know. Can you do the one-offs? Can you do the chapters? Are you still a narrative person? I'm branching a little bit further away from the narrative side of things overall. I just don't have the bandwidth. Honestly, in a couple games in the last year or two, I find myself, truth be told, skimming the narrative and not really caring about it nearly as much, right? I'm looking at you, Trudvang Legends. Holy F-balls, Batman, right? So that's my concern, this labor of love with it and Awakened Realms. So, just trying to keep myself out of trouble, folks. Just trying to keep myself out of trouble. So what else went up a year ago? Well, speaking of massive games, right? Tanares Adventures, which is in the process of, I believe, coming over and being delivered at this standpoint. And to be fair, this one launched at the very end of June, mostly in July, but we cover when they launched. And it only raised $1.5 million because this was sort of the Everdell Complete Collection for Tanares as a whole from Dragori Games. 110 quests, massive dungeon crawling, massive, massive mother of a miniature. And it was sort of the, you get in and you can get everything right now, right? The skill system, the quests, the mechanics, they sort of did the manipulatable AI system a little bit differently, a little bit more openish, that weren't so grindy, repetitive in some of the quests in the previous two rounds of their crowdfunding, that I think people were relatively happy with from a D20 rolling combat style of system. And they said, okay, new tutorial, new skills for each alternate combat role, mystery envelopes, unlocked content, ultimate challenges, dragons. You can get them painted, you can get them non-painted. Again, just massive, massive mothers of quantity. I mean, their miniatures are probably, second to Seamon's and Awakened Realms in terms of some of the quality they put out, right? But the question you had to ask yourself with this game is, the Tanares all-in right now was $649. Super box full. That's what they just called it on the page. 2 storage boxes of stuff. The Dragon Collection, the Madness Box, the Golden Dragon, the Taresk, audio narration, phase board, Silver Dragon, Penumbral Die, Mythical Phoenix miniature. All of that for awesome sum. Cosmetic will cost you another $200 painted on top of that. So is it unique enough? Again, both of these, I would make my generalized argument that these are life-freaking style games. And if you haven't heard me use my definition of that, it's anything that's going to fill up your table and be more than triple digits, essentially. I don't care if it's, an hour long. I don't care if it's 6 hours long. I don't care if it's Twilight Imperium. I don't care if it's Cthulhu Death May Die. You need to have a certain number of iterations of plays in order to get anywhere close to reimbursement level of satisfaction. I'm not going to put a number on that, but that's the vagary of what a lifestyle game is now. You can't one-off it, essentially, right? Like this hobby is so fond of. That's what I just had the blessing curse of when I was talking about my review at the end of May with Seismic, right? Like the end game scoring, right? It's better off as a replay, a root, a PAX premiere, or an oath. But does that fulfill you? Can you play this 30 times in a year? Insert X number, whatever you want there. And when we pull up their page, their shipping is ongoing right now. They are en route to the hubs. So this was not like a ton of new content. This was a lot of old stuff with some new stuff mixed in. So the fact that you're already going to potentially get it, well, I mean, you're still talking about, 6 months late, but that's Kickstarter crowdfunding in general. 6 months? 6 months is you basically just add that under the campaign. If you would have done that, it said February 2024. And guess what? You're probably going to have it, well, maybe by July. If you're one of those unlucky people like I usually am, you usually get it at the end. So maybe August. So right there, bam, right? You do the math, 18 months. So do you feel like this one was worth it for you? I see this one, truth be told, less in the secondary market than some of its other compatriots or contemporaries. So I'm not saying much about it from that standpoint. You could argue that sheer quantity as well, but 8,000 backers nearly. Okay. Got a good following. They got Odin coming out this month too. Speaking of, right, the Awakened Realm symmetry of Grim Coven launching at the same time Stalker. Now Dragori's coming back. You got a timing. So we're not even going to talk about Grim Coven in this video. That's a whole separate video in and of itself though, right? Gosh, let's just smashing on a roll of all the big ones. Gloomhaven, the role-playing game with a Frosthaven reprint. Millions and billions of dollars. Your opinion is already divided or already made up, so nothing I say is going to change your mind on how you feel about this. This is an ultimate hobby trap. Meaning, if you have the wherewithal, the time, space, and effort, it might be one of the best experiences ever. Unless you fall under that niche crowd, though, it's going to be a wet dream, I think, more than anything else. So, again, pointing the finger at me rather than at you guys. Talking about myself, not talking about anyone else or anything else you should think of. This is probably up there in terms of the games all time that you should never own. Never. And, probably it's one of those games where you're going to look at me right there and you're going to say, Chris, you're an idiot. Click, turn the YouTube video off and just say, see you later. But hear me out, right? Like, there are 1,000 games, there are probably 3 to 4 dungeon crawl games whose main selling aspect now on crowdfunding on a monthly basis that are saying you need X amount of hours, you need 3,700 different scenarios, you need a lifestyle campaign game, triple digits, insert other adjectives, open world, narrative, different decisions affecting ramifications, whatever it may be, right? Right? And, this one is the mother of them all. That sort of broke the dam, if you will, a few years ago with the Gloom, and then the Jaws, and now the Frosts of it, Haven-wise. And now the Coven asks neighbors, if you will, right? Do you want to make this game just even more of a massively overhead setup, conundrum, cluster, fruitcake, and, everything else from that aspect of things, right? And you can get that, and that's fine. It was fantastically well supported, and it was loved. But was it something that you said you needed, right? People have shown with their wallets that they're willing to pay for this. The demand is there in that sense. It might not be for you, but freaking people are throwing money at the screens when this stuff comes out, period. And that is not unnoticed from a marketing standpoint by publishers, right? If that's where the money is, why do you think they keep on doing it again and again? Why do you think CMON goes back to the tried and true? Why do you think Awaken Realms puts out so many crawl type games with a miniature emphasis heavy on all of those? It's where this is, period, in the hobby. A not insignificant ratio comparatively to the whole. Say what you will. I'm not going to comment about how positive or negative or influential or drag down or quagmire or just total aesthetic experience on the table, whatever. But it's where the money is. And the only thing that changes how this goes is voting with your wallet. So when you have millions and millions and millions of dollars for 500 miniatures in total to replace all of the standees in the Haven-esque plethora of line, and people do that, well, guess what? They're going to do it again. And I mean that not just them, but I mean them. So everyone that's shocked or surprised, right? You know where I stand. I'm biased Team Liege, standee, Meeple, whatever, right? I'm not going to put down a good miniature, but if you're going to give me preference from my Dutch frugality, then I'm going to go the opposite route, and that's okay if you give me a choice. But at some point, my choice is also going to be not to back it, because I just don't need more sometimes, right? I don't need more. More is not the issue with any of these games in the hobby anymore, right? Most of them. We're not going there otherwise, though. So I'm going to leave it at that. And that was the other thing on this campaign that I just looked at and I said, as smashing of success as this is, WTF is this coming to crowdfunding so soon, right? They are in the midst of Wave 3 right now. Wave 3 was supposed to be going on in March, January, somewhere right in between there. And it is now June. And we are supposed to be in Wave 4. We're not anywhere near Wave 4 whatsoever. The pledge manager is closing about the time that this is going to air. So they don't even have Wave 1 and Wave 2 done in the EU. Buttons and Bugs is out there. But all the other stuff is kind of, well, okay-ish. Some fulfilled, some not. So that's going to be the big issue, is how much of this is going to be delayed, because the miniatures, right? The main freaking attraction of this is Wave 5. And that was supposed to be, if all of these other things went on schedule, in January 2025. That was the part that pisses me off. That was the part that I was alluding to a second ago, right? You came in June 2023. Year and a half. Over a year and a half out. I'm sorry. Again, this is why crowdfunding goes the way it goes, folks. they probably didn't need crowdfunding to do this. This is one of, I would make the argument, one of the biggest companies, overall speak, size-wise, production-wise, copies sold-wise, out there. Needed, right? I'm wrong. I'll probably be wrong. I'll get someone in the comment section to tell me that, yeah. But what I'm saying is they needed it just as much as CMON needed it. Meaning, if you're going to give me a free freaking loan for 2 years, I'll take it. 0 interest, 0 guarantee you're going to get it anytime in that span. No accountability to that sense. Yeah, I'll do what I want, right? Look at Kingdom Death. Oh, gonna get those rabid fans in the comment section. But, you know, sarcasm, exaggeration aside there for a second. If you're going to give him a $5 million loan to play around with for 2 years, who's not going to take that? I don't blame them. I don't blame them whatsoever. It's you guys that are willing to shell out hundreds and hundreds of dollars for 2 years in advance. I say you guys, me. Because remember, I don't point at you, I point at myself first. Although this one, I'm not part of this one, so I can't really blame myself on this one. But past experiences, we'll blame it. It's all on my past. My past backing enabled this in the first place. There we go. But that's what I'm saying, right? Like, you know, if someone came up to you on the street today and said, you know what, Chris, here is $2,000. I want $2,000 back in 2 years. Okay, you're going to say no to that? Well, you might. Absolutely no strings attached, Chris. Get them signed, sealed, delivered right there, right? I mean, you put that in the bank and you just make money on it. You put it in the stock market, you make some money on it. You just sit on it and you don't lose money on it. The only person that's losing money on that or losing the capital to buy other things in the meantime, the opportunity cost is on the side of things, right? If you have $500 tied up in this, it means you have $500 that's not able to be tied up in anything else. And half of you are going to ignore this point altogether because you're going to go, Chris, I have way too much capital already. Like, I'm surrounded by this many games, so I clearly don't have a funds income issue whatsoever. But some do. And that's the person I'm talking to in this campaign. And that's not going to change your opinion, though, either way. So let's just move on to the next one because I'm just going to get myself in trouble or irritate people in the comment section as a whole. Planet Unknown, the Supermoon expansion with the deluxe edition reprint in the Lazy Susan style, terraforming your planet with asymmetric abilities and a little bit of a longer asymmetric Euro issue, right? Supermoon expansion, giving you a little bit more. Did I just comment on the more side of things? I did. Because this one not only adds more, it adds the deluxeification of this that everyone clamored for, that they were buying probably for a 50% markup on the secondary market before this campaign was announced. And then they also added an expansion that actually increases the length of time that this game plays. I haven't gotten rid of this game. I'm open to the Supermoon expansion as an element of things, but it already pushes the limits of length that I want to play a tile laying game in the first place, as much as I love tile laying games as a whole, because you're adding a whole new sideboard as well. $1.5 nearly $1 million at the time of me filming this raised, which is again almost double the amount that was raised during the campaign of $837,000, which again is a relatively increased significant amount because it was 8,800 people during the campaign and only 10,900 total afterwards, which if you're doing the math, that's $700,000 raised for the 2,000, almost 2,500, 3,000 people post-campaign, which again speaks to the amount that more people are upgrading pledges in there rather than late pledging as a whole. Say what you will with that information. I don't think that's actually terribly useful, but that's what you've got going on. I looked at this and I said, okay, you know, Kennerspiel nomination 2023, Seal of Excellence, Golden Geek Greatness, and awesome Lazy Susan. Lazy Susan is probably one of the best things that ever come out of these tile laying situations. I don't know. I mean, you could even get some of the extras that were offered with the deluxeification, and the pledge was actually really well received, I think, price-wise, if you only wanted that. Or if you wanted to get them all a la mode, you could do that too. But I just looked at this and I said, you know what? I don't play this game enough. I don't have this game played enough to really get an expansion for it. I'm happy enough with it is. And I was really concerned that even if it adds 15 minutes, right? Like, I don't know. It just stayed a little bit longer on the table than I wanted to. Not that it's bad in any way, but like, you know, you just, even as much as you like a game sometimes, it's like a movie, right? You have the differences of you going to see a movie, and there's some movies that are, 3 hours long, and all of a sudden, halfway through, you're like, holy crap, it's been an hour and a half. Or you're like, holy crap, it's only been an hour and a half. There's still an hour and a half more. You know what I'm saying right there? The difference between those two. And it just felt like the latter for me a little bit in that way. Again, I haven't played it in a while, so maybe repeated play in the near future will help me delineate that when it comes to retail and when it comes inevitably on the trade market. But at the same time, I don't feel an overwhelming pressing need to it. And that's okay. I have a lot of other stuff that I love. And that's what this came down to. As I said, opportunity cost for things I love versus things I may love. And this was on the may side of things, so I couldn't easily justify it. I could pay for it again, just like with the other comment, right? It's not that issue. It's the, do I really need it? Delivery, April of 2024. Pledge Manager just closed at the middle of May, and production just started in May as well. So, okay, I mean, that's fine, I guess, but if your production is just beginning right now, prior to me filming this, 2 or 3 weeks prior to me filming this, the last update has the delivery at this point of being, if everything goes smoothly, October 2024. So again, I mean, 6 months overdue, right? Which, on the surface, again, 6 months doesn't sound like a whole lot. But I guess when I sit back and I think about it at the same time, I go, the majority of this was a reprint. Like, expansion content took over a year to finalize. And again, I just look at that and I go, it's the free loan thing. People are coming earlier and earlier, sooner and sooner before this stuff is anywhere near close to completion. And that's why I give a lot of kudos to companies that don't do that. Say what you will about the concurrently running, at the time of me filming this, Ironwood from Mindclash. They've basically said, we're hitting the print button when it's done. You may not like the pre-order system, but there's something to be said of them coming and saying, here's the rule book, here's the transparency, here's what it is, here is when it's going to be, because it's click and go and boom, right? And there's something satisfying about that. There is. And so anybody that delivers on time or early, I will always give you freaking kudos. Period. Again, not to say that later is detrimental, but just that let's call a spade, right? We are poor projectors as a community, as a hobby. There's absolutely, again, zero incentive for these timelines that companies put out there to be followed. Zero. What's the penalty for being late? Zero. What's the penalty for not showing you a rule book? Zero. What's the penalty for any of this stuff if they don't stay on track with things? Zero. Guess what? Because they've already got your money. That is why you do not pledge if you have any concerns, doubts whatsoever. That's why I say back it for $1 or late pledge altogether. Boom, shaka, laka. NBA Jam reference there. Look it up. I'm over, right? Game found done. Speaking of things that are delivering though, AEG Expansion Extravaganza. Now this one has a different dilemma. Alderac, one, I have found getting Alderac's games on the secondary side of things, even from their web shop when they go on massive discount, is often cheaper than their crowdfunding. The other issue I have with this one right now, which raised $400,000 for a combination of Space Base, I was almost about to say Space Chest, War Chest, Tiny Towns, Cubitos, all getting expansions into one campaign. They're 4 probably biggest-ish sellers, or the 4 that have the most name recognition, I'd argue, as a whole. Are any of those intriguing for you? I just literally bought the copy of messing this up. This is all blurring together. War Chests expansion from somebody on the secondary market. And so the only one I really, really wanted was Space Base Genesis, as taking just more and more and more of a good thing for Space Base, which is my wife's favorite game. But I can't, so I bought Nightfall, the War Chest expansion, on the secondary market from someone selling it for basically a cost. So I'm okay with that, but they're delivered. They're delivered. And again, the prices were good during the campaign. $29 for base games, $19 for expansions. The more you got, the more you saved. But also, if you didn't want to necessarily get it early, you didn't really need to get it on the campaign. If you're okay with waiting, like I was being impatient about the, expansion content, no news in my head, and this is one that I went for, I don't see any reason that you needed to get it now, unless you were going for a bundle deal. The bundle deals were really good, but if you weren't bundling and you were going for just new, wait. So that was the dilemma. I just want Space-Based Genesis because it would have been a nice birthday present for my wife. But I'm okay with waiting too. I'd love to have it in a month, so I could bring it on our vacation and surprise her with it, but that's not going to happen. So we'll see. I mean, again, I've heard that they're relatively well received, at least the two that I've looked at. I don't know. I didn't look into the Tiny Towns. I didn't look into Kabutos, but I know the Nightfall has been relatively positively received. I know that Space-Based Genesis have been relatively positively received overall. And for lighter based fairs that don't overcomplicate and don't increase the length, the dynamic, the overhead, the learning curve, the whatever, right? Which one do you pick up? I would argue that this is probably the first space-based expansion you get it now. Skip Chai Pluto. I don't think it's necessary. Don't really like the campaign style. Kind of has a couple mechanisms that I just don't like using. My wife doesn't like using at all, right? War Chest, no idea. Pick whichever one you want. Kabutos, well, that's the only expansion, so you're going to get that. And Tiny Towns, your mileage is going to vary. There's like 6 of them now. Just kidding, there's like 3 or 4. But, I mean, they've got a good audience for these games. Wouldn't be surprised if they do something like this again, a la your all plays, putting in games, putting in expansions all together with one and putting out a solid line as a pre-order, essentially. So there you go, right? Then let's talk about Cyclades, Matago, right? I just covered this on my UK Gaming Expo because Matago's going to have some copies over there you can play on. This sort of did a spin on the original version. They combined, mishmashed, smushed together all of the expansions into the base game now, upgrading, differentiating, smoothing out mechanics, getting rid of stuff, adding in other things, giving you a miniature version, an awesome wooden Meeple looking version, he said biasedly. And so they said, here you go. No gameplay content difference, no, exclusivity, except for the fact that the miniatures was going to be the crowdfunded and the other wasn't. And that's okay. And they said, okay, here you go. Details, rules, Matago, there you go. And there's going to be more info, more playtesting, more just try it out at UK Gaming Expo, probably just prior to this airing, I think, actually. So I'm sure we're going to get some game reports of people who have played it over there. In combination with Open Sesame Games, they actually had a late pledge going up until the middle of May. And this game, again, like you may not be enthralled by this auction bidding area control style of things, but 10,700 people were, and it raised 1.1 million pounds when it was live. So that's the aspect of things for December 2024 delivery date. So we're still a ways off. So if you get to try it out now in the middle of the year, you may still actually have it by the end of the year as a whole. But it was still going to cost you, a la the Kemet remake that they did as well, anywhere between 100 and 150 pounds shipped. So miniatures, common stretch goals at that pledge level, 100 pounds. You want the 3D buildings, it's going to be 120. You just want the Meeple pledge. This is where I went, right? Common stretch goals, Meeple stretch goals, 59 pounds, $64 plus shipping. You're looking at over $80. Well, do you think that might be a little bit less at retail at some point? I'm banking on that. And I really like the Meeples that they did because they actually were cool colored Meeple miniature shapes. And I'm fine with that, right? Aesthetically, thematically, experience-wise on the table as a whole. So how do you feel about that? I mean, I think this game is relatively well thought of. All of the comments from the people who are die-hard, hardcore, played it 337 times on the Board Game Geek forums were like, yeah, mostly it seems to be a positive upgrade. A few things I might not have changed, but a lot of stuff that, mitigated or took out some of the dynamics that made it a little bit uneven or whatever it may be, right? They've got the rule books out there. Again, the pledge manager is closed. Pre-production is on, it's finalized. They've got pictures, visualizations of everything along those lines. I mean, the only thing is nothing on the latest update at the time of me filming this, just saying that, production's going to be launching at the end of June. And if that's the case, I mean, in theory, maybe you get it before the due date at the end of 2024. But again, they put it out as a year and a half. And I don't like that. Just like the Gloomhaven one, right? But I guess if you're going to do it one way, you underpromise and overdeliver rather than vice versa. That's how I would prefer to have things, period. So if I'm going to support it, I'd rather get it sooner rather than well after. But at the same time, as I always say, good product is a good product forever. Crappy product early is still a crappy product. So make it the best you can, but also don't be surprised if I'm waiting 6, 8, 9 months to late pledge until I get that rulebook and everything else like I mentioned. And this is no exception to that either. So we'll see what the final product really looks like. So I wasn't kidding with this video. This is a massive, massive month, right? Firefly the game, the 10th anniversary collector's edition from Gale Force 9, putting out everything in the whole verse in a box, as they say. Every expansion, every promo, every single thing you can have in a shiny crate, plus a new still flying expansion. The question was, did you need? No, right? That's never this video, Chris. That's a whole different video. You don't need any of this stuff. But if this was your grail game, a lot of this stuff was out of print, not just necessarily out of stock. And so there were some, you know, collectors, there were some interested parties, because it's freaking Firefly, which again is kind of, you know, it's good, but it's also, you know, anyway, we're not going to get myself in trouble in the comment section there, right? $3.4 million total, because you do the whole little game found original versus late backing campaign and add it all together, right? But it raised 2.7 during the campaign, which is freaking fantastic regardless, right? I would have picked a couple $100,000, but apparently you Firefly junkies are fireflying all of the fireflying freaking face of the place, right? But let's not kid ourselves. This was a ton of forking money, and they delivered, because this was one of those, almost everything is ready to go, we're just giving you a tiny bit of new stuff so we can reprint it rather quickly sort of campaigns. But it was still going to be $220, which on the secondary market for when it was going live, not necessarily as big of that sense, right? More like Everdell Complete Collection, where if you were an early adopter, you kind of, well, ended up paying a little bit more, and a lot of people were just gruntled about that. Yeah, they were. Not me. I actually had no horse in either of these races. But that was the question. January 2024. I don't even know, but they're done delivering it. It's backed to people. They were finished in April. So, I mean, it was a couple months overdue, but who the deuce cares, because you delivered in under a freaking year. So you delivered under a freaking year, and you're always going to get kudos from me, right? Ba-doom. Unless you're a print and play. Then we're going to have words. But you know what I'm saying. So that is where we're going with this. Now, the interesting standpoint, though, as I was looking at the crowdfunding page when doing this, Gale Force 9 just did earlier this year the Conan game, right? The Conan dice-driven one versus the other style of things. And I covered it on the crowdfunding roundup. But interestingly enough, because I'm not following this GameFound page, the last update on there was during the Conan campaign at the very end of April, right? And they said, FYI, in case you missed the campaign originally, you can get in on it as an add-on on the Adventures of Conan page. So if you missed it, again, right, there is nothing to fear. There is no FOMO with this stuff. So that's really the issue, because when I scroll over to the page, literally right now, you can back this. You can back this. You can back this right now. It's the exact same motherforking price. $220 plus whatever shipping is going to run you, right? Whatever shipping is going to run you for this massive thing. Probably like $50. Okay, maybe a little less, depending on where you're at. I'm talking North America prices. You Europe folks, you know, far Australian, New Zealand folks who somehow managed to stumble upon my awkwardly, hilariously laugh at me channel. Well, maybe a little bit more for you guys. I'm sorry about that. But that's the thing, right? Like, do you need this? Just like the one we're going to talk about next, right? It was a game where I'm not even going to bother looking at the Board Game Geek reviews, because I know it's a niche within a niche, right? The only people who are going to get this are going to love this game. This is not a casual, I'm going to go pick this up sort of thing, right? Speaking of that, though, we're going to go right into that from Shem Phillips and Garfield Games when they did Shipwrights of the North Sea Redux, which I said during the campaign. I'm like, why? Because the Board Game Geek description, I'll read this, right? Entirely new game. Then why the deuce are you calling it a Redux? Why are you even calling it by the same name as the previous one? Entirely new game. You know, when you see it on the video game side of things, Redux does not mean entirely new game. So I feel like it's playing off of, obviously, maybe not actually an entirely new game, but playing off the goodwill of that game previously. Again, say what you will, rightly or wrongly, no judgment. It's a marketing thing, right? It's a marketing thing. You know, you're putting stuff out there that people recognize. That's why, in case you didn't figure out, Garfield does trilogies, because there's marketing in the South Tigris, South Tigris, South Tigris, North Kingdom, whatever, right? You know, they're all the same. You get people that do that. You get people that do the Queen matching boxes of the Feldians, right? Because they match, because they go together, because they're sets, because it's FOMO in a different freaking way that you don't normally think about and your brain hasn't recognized as marketing in the first place. And, you know, mixed opinions. But again, niche within a niche, right? Because if that's really truly marketing, it's going to appeal to people who are going, I'm not sure I liked that game the first time around. I think this might be a better iteration of it. A 2.0, if you will. Or people that are just going, yeah, I like that game. You're telling me this game is better, Chris? Ooh, right? And that's why it's got a 7.8 on Board Game Geek right now. Again, say what you will, but that's the marketing audience you're going for from that aspect of things. Victory points, simultaneous play, construction, very card draw driven dependent. Hit or miss. But it's in backers' hands too right now. So that's great and all. I mean, 3,500 people, a couple $100,000 in crowdfunding, was supposed to be delivered in February. You know, it got updated in the final one for shipping in February. So it was right on time. And again, right? Under a year. Freaking sweet. That is, well, what, like 8.5 months or so? It's pretty good. It's pretty good as a Redux. Mm-hmm. So the only thing I'm going to say, though, is the crowdfunding campaign for just the base pledge, right? This is, you know, the one that nobody gets. And this was $45 US before shipping. $45. Okay. $45 makes sense. Okay. Deluxe was $57. Deluxe gets you the metal coins and the promo pack, like the 8 cards or whatever it offers, right? So if you don't care about promos because they offer a fraction of the actual content and you have 37 other pairs of metal coins, right? You're paying $45 plus, you know, let's say $15 shipping, $60. When I Googled this tonight, looking at this, I can get it for anywhere between $38 and $42 at the low end of things. And, you know, you don't buy retail without hitting the free shipping threshold. So, right? So if you just take that at face value, you know, that's $20 difference. Support your indie publisher, half the price of the game. Right? Where do you draw that line? No judgment either way, but $20 on one game, $20 on another, $20 on another, $20 on another. It adds up over time. Let's just stay with this theme. Niche within a niche. Within a niche, I'm mispronouncing it. Who cares? Inventions of... Well, just Inventions, Evolution of Ideas from Lacerda. Eagle Griffin. They got a type. People massively go after these. I mean, but again, my thought process on these is, right, like they put like 1 or 2 of these out a year. And I always make this comparison with dungeon crawls, with campaigns, with those lifestyle games, Randy Orton pose. That is what this is too, right? I mean, this is going to take you 3 hours to play. 3 hours to play, an hour to teach, you know, whatever else. How many of those 3 hours, just like a dungeon crawl setup thing is going to do too, along those lines of same weight, aspect, time frame, table space? Because let's not kid ourselves. This is not like these little Lacerdas are sitting on the table and they fill up, you know, half of my 3x3 here, right? Nope. Bigger than that. So all of those aspects are significant. And I just feel like the Venn diagram of people that get this one and the next one and the previous one, not so much a Venn diagram, but very much more like an almost complete eclipse, right? So does it really matter though? No, it doesn't. I'm just driving home a point just because we don't look at it like Euro games, like deck builders or some of the other style of Amerithrash especially get looked at like, well, do you really need all of those different types? No, I don't. But you know what? Turn around, look in the mirror on the other side of things. These super heavy worker placements. Do you really? Right? $800,000. It's delivered. It's, you know, slightly cheaper. Now, this was one of the last ones, though, to do some stretch goals. I think pretty much most of the Eagle Griffin ones after this haven't done nearly as many stretch goals. just with like a little promo side of things, right? And it's Tool, it's Lacerda, you've got to type, aesthetically way too heavy from a functional standpoint, but aesthetically very pleasing. So I'm going to leave it there because I don't have a freaking clue. But again, 8.2, but 8.2, who outside of the super heavy gamers are going to rate this one? Like no one light's going to rate this. So it's so biased towards it already. Take that for what you will. Grain of salt with the rating in this one in a nutshell. Now, the other one we have to talk about though, Cryptozoic. Cryptozoic, I was really not anticipating them doing so well on crowdfunding when they've come back with the DC deck building games. And the Justice League Dark game was, it's Justice League Dark, it's just kind of cool. And again, it raised almost $1 million, but there's some FOMO there. They had a bunch of Kickstarter exclusive cards, Nemesis, main deck cards, dueling cards, promos, all sorts of stuff, right? Unique tokens, all of those little things to go along with it. And you could bundle it with like the 2-player game as well. It's DC deck building. The only thing I worry about is scope and power creep that goes with these, right? Like, if this is that much better, why would I ever buy some of your old products? That's where my head goes with the more recent stuff from Cryptozoic in this line. Unless you're like a junkie and the Marvels and the Legendaries and the Uniteds and the LCGs and those as so that's where I'm going with that, right? But to get the exclusive sleeve, because you need the exclusive sleeve plus the combination of the games, right? That what was offered for $75 in the manner of availability. And it was delivered. It is delivered, right on time from a freaking standpoint. Some of the online retailers have it for $40 even. So you're going to be, again, talking how much are those sets of promos worth? Are they worth, $5 worth of promos, $10 worth of promos? You're looking at $20+ actually worth of promos and shipping included with a difference now. And that's where you have to draw the line. And that's where Cryptozoic has played on the FOMO pretty well to drum up that much money with offering more. And we've seen less and less of that in crowdfunding in the last year to 2 years overall as someone who covers it on a weekly basis, right? And is it better? Is it good? I don't have a freaking clue. Because it's DC deck building, because it's the 17,000th iteration of this, you have less and less people voting for it, and again, a lot of the people getting it and voting for it are just like the previous couple games you talked about. Like, they're going to be your hardcore DCers, right? I'm looking at the page right now on Board Game Geek. Let me show you this. Boom, it's all greens. When was the last time you saw any game have all green ratings? Holy cow, right? Again, it's a game I'd love to try. If this is a standalone and this is appealing, I'd be all for trying it, but I don't know if I'm willing to pay $50 for it at this point. I have a hard enough time with the other stuff. And, the big criticism in the past that I've seen with DC is it's a little bit of a runaway leader situation. So would it be absolutely appealing? Absolutely. I had to edit a second out there because I had a little phrasing issue. I would easily play it with my kids. As a game that's just a great introductory, because Marvel Legendary is one that we can fully utilize right now, but we haven't played Legendary in over a year. So do I really need this? It's going to be easier to wield and get to the table, but my kids don't know DC. They don't. They know Marvel. When was the last other super really good DC Comics game that my kids had that they went to the movie theaters and watched or watched on streaming? Ooh, them's fighting words in the comment section. But that's the point, right? Like, them's fighting words. How does that really matter? Does it really matter? Do you have the core audience? Are you getting an audience for the future is really the question with this more than anything else. So again, I'm really happy to see that a bunch of these are delivered, because that's really good. As much as I talked about the ones at the beginning when they just aren't delivered and you're giving this years and years worth of loans. Okay, backer kit. Again, Innovation Ultimate. Streamlining innovation as one of the best games of all time, right? And no one's gonna, necessarily dispute that, but it has stood up the test of time, I would say. Top 400 of Board Game Geek. And base game, 5 expansions, age 11 cards, updates. Asmati, I want a copy of this. I couldn't do it though. A couple months before this campaign went live, I bought a copy of, on the secondary market, Innovation Deluxe. I didn't pay as much as people were scalping it for. overall, but I still paid more or about the same as the pledge level was on BackerKit in the first place for them. And it raised $250,000 for being on BackerKit, right? Like, just sorry. That's a low blow. I know, I'm kidding. But I mean, it was $70 and it's not backwards compatible. It's no upgrade kit available. And that just, I think, left a bad taste in people's mouths. Like, yeah, you're like 3.0ing it, but did it really need a 3.0? Arguably, maybe not. Because the ultimate suggestion with this game is that you play it with the base game and maybe one expansion for like the first 30 or 50 games. So do I really need 4 more expansions to go along with it, including a new one? Well, no. FOMO me, marketing side of, this hobby says abso-freaking-lutely. Your version, which is slightly nuanced, it reminds me, I guess we'll make this comparison, right? College books, right? Oh, there's a new iteration of a book out. You need to buy it this year for this class because the old version has 3 spelling errors that are going to affect your final. No, one of the biggest scams out there. And that's what it sort of gives me vibes of. Not a scam, not saying that. But just, is it really? No. If you didn't know this existed, you would be completely content with your other copies. Right? The other tricky point was during the campaign, they said, we're not done with it. 115 new cards in the expansion, redoing 100 cards from the other sets. 2 weeks prior to me filming this, they said, rulebook is nearly done. Because at the same time, when they say that this is done, they also say that they just want crowdsourcing proofreading. And I guess that's kind of okay, but at the same time, like, they've finally opened up the Pledge Manager in April. So 10 months after the campaign, they opened the Pledge Manager. Pre-orders can be done on BackerKit right now. And I don't, because I kind of hate how BackerKit is set up, finding or trying to find when the production is going to be there or when it was scheduled to be there. And you know what? You're probably going to be lucky if you have this by the end of the year. That's where I'm going to say. And I'm going to guess that's the over. I'm going to guess that's putting them well over when their predicted date was. But BackerKit just frustrates me in terms of how it's set up and the user friendliness of it, even more so than GameFound. But again, I'd be open to trying it, trading for it, or acquiring it at some point. But in the meantime, I'm going to go back to my, deluxe edition. Then last up, we have to talk about it. Salt and Pepper in combination with 25th Century. They did a re-implementation, re-theme, redoing of the very, very well thought of solo game Resist. Way too difficult for me. I played it. They sent me a copy. Fantastically mechanically overall, right? But just way too difficult. And then they did Witchcraft, right? 1 player, again, best crowdfunding, gone to retail, solo game of the last couple years. 2023's Golden Game Geek, right? 2023 Board Game Geek, Golden Geek, nominee in the solo category. I'm not going to say that again and try and get it right for the 3rd time. Card-driven solitaire. Your Coven of Witches and magic's real, monsters are real. Hidden revealed mechanisms. There was the 2-pile system, which side you're using and which aspects with the resist, and whether or not the magic is evil or you're protecting the village in the first place. So you're going to have multiple witches you're selecting, and it's delivered. It's got a 0.3 higher rating than Resist did, and Resist is really well thought of. And 7.9, again, less than 1,000 people rating it. Who cares? Because if you liked Resist, also, I guess, right, this is slightly better. And Resist also was on the lines of the nominees for Solo Game of the Year as well in 2022. So, pedigree, there. Check. It's just solo game only. Difficult solo game. How do you feel about them apples? I actually like the theme of this one better than Resist personally, but it's my own thing. Not a big war game, even thematically incorporated situation, right? I'm always more of a fantasy. It's just growing up too. That's what I read. I snuck into my brother's room. He's 7 years older than I am. When I was younger and when I was like, 10 and started reading, things that were well outside of the normal fantasy that I should have been reading. I read one Stephen King once, though, and I was like, nope, just kidding. That's actually how I ended up finding out and reading Jurassic Park, the original Jurassic Park, before the movie came out. wow, I probably shouldn't have read that book. If you haven't read that book, much more gruesome than the actual movie. Just like the Bourne trilogy, right? Much better book than movie. The movie's pretty decent, though. I'll give it that. Both those movies are. But books, much better. Much better. Go read the original Jurassic Park and the original Bourne Identity. Fan-freaking-tastic, especially Bourne Identity. Does it hold up, though? I don't know. Anyway, how did I get on this topic? Anyway, we're done. This is a super long video. This was me not even covering a few things that I had on my list because I don't want this video to go absolutely too long, but things I didn't cover that I could have covered, right? Ice, the first time around, from This Way Games. Fairies and Magical Creatures. Eldfall Chronicles, the standalone expansion North Wind. Waypoints from Postmark Games. Scarface 1920 with the Bloody Business expansion. All of those things also launched a year ago. Right? That's big company. And I already told you, if you missed out at the beginning of the month, that June is so far the biggest month of 2024 as well. So that's what we got. That's where we're going. That's where we've been. That's why we look back. Critiques, criticisms, crabbiness, all in one. I have a great time making these videos. I hope you enjoy watching them as much as I might like making them. I'm leaving that in there. Screw it. Peace out. Stay classy at the end of the video. Have a great freaking day. 92,300,000. The opportunity cost of having triple digits, quadruple digits tied up, not even for a hobby side of things, because again, I won't make the argument that you can't do that, shouldn't do that, whatever, right? Because the return on investment, return on value, return on game time, return on fun, you know, compared to going out to the movies, going out to dinner. Those are the examples people always use. I go out to dinner and spend $60. I'd rather spend it on a board game with repeated. You know what I'm saying, though, right? You don't have that $60 just sitting tied up in the nether, you know, to maybe get a return on something you're going to like. Because again, like, at least you go out to dinner, if you're like me, you know what you like. And you get something you like. Well, are you going to like all these board games you have tied up, or are you actually going to experience it? What if you just bought a bunch of food at the grocery store, $100 worth of food, and you just let it rot in your fridge every week? How would you feel about things then? And you know what? It's kind of hard to sell that grocery stuff, but you know what I'm saying at the same time.